Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Damme and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies, and today I want to tell you about 10 really great dark movies you can currently watch on Netflix. So I have not talked about this genre in quite a while, but it is one of my more popular ones, so hopefully this video does well. Be sure to click the like button, comment, do all of that. But we're going to start all the way back at number 10 with one repeat from last week that was on my sci-fi list. There's a link to that in the description, but Lifechanger is science fiction. It kind of fit on that list, but man is it dark. It is grim. This movie is about a shapeshifter that, in order to take the form of a person, has to suck the life out of them. There is graphic imagery in this one. It's a dark subject matter because you're dealing with this being that isn't human, but that just needs to consume human life in order to survive. And it's not a horror movie. It's definitely got horror tones. It's a great Halloween watch, but this is just a good dark thriller with some supernatural elements. The reason it's at number 10 is it's a very low budget movie. It's minimal in terms of the sets and things like that. There's nobody really just killing it in the acting game in this movie. They all do a good enough job, but that's why it's at the back of the pack. I'll also go ahead and say most of these are pretty weird. This was almost a weird movies list, but every one of them is very, very dark in nature, including Only God Forgives, directed by Nicholas Winding Refn. If that name sounds familiar, he's most famous for directing Drive with Ryan Gosling. He actually has a series currently on Amazon Prime called Too Old to Die Young. I just started it. I'm not quite yet to give you the verdict on that one, but I will be talking about it on the podcast this week. You can check out a link to that in the description. But Only God Forgives is not for everybody. Ryan Gosling's great in it. It's got a really great vibe, but this is an art film. It goes to a very weird place. Most people are not happy with the way that this one concludes, but it still makes the list because if you know that going in, I think you can still enjoy the aesthetic of this one, the performances, and ultimately enjoy how weird it gets as long as you don't have expectations that this movie should go in a certain direction. Radius is another small movie with kind of a sci-fi slant. It's got like a Twilight Zone kind of vibe to it, but it's about a guy who suddenly finds out, you learn this very quickly so this isn't a spoiler, but the catch for this one is he finds out everybody and everything, including birds and assuming other animals, that come within a certain radius of him, and it's not big. It might be 50 feet, I think it might be less. As soon as they come into that barrier, their eyes go white and they drop dead. It's a really cool concept. My only regret with this one is that they didn't do more with it, and that's due to budget. I mean, this is another small movie that's surprisingly cool for such like a little hidden gem. But with more money, they could have really expanded this into something amazing, kind of like Chronicle or something like that. It doesn't really go there. It remains a very small, kind of like personal story, but it is good and it's got some crazy supernatural elements as well. The only movie on this list with dark in the name is a Netflix original called Hold the Dark. Now this is another one kind of like Only God Forgives, where a lot of people did not like the way this one panned out. I think though, it's still a very enjoyable watch if you go into it with the right expectations, which is a very large part of what I do here on this channel, is try to give you an idea of what you're gonna see so that you enjoy it more when you watch it. This one has some very weird elements. It plays out very much like a novel, and there's a lot to sort of decode and understand. As long as you don't try to like put this one into a box, I think you can enjoy it. It's a murder mystery. It's out in the Arctic. There's a crazy shootout. There's possibly, I'm not going to give anything away, but there's the hint of some supernatural things fairly early on in this movie, and it's absolutely dark. It's done by one of my favorite rising directors. However, I find that this is maybe not his best movie. I really enjoy Blue Ruin and Green Room a lot more, yet this, for a Netflix original, I think is a good entry. And then the most stylish one, even though Only God Forgives is very stylish, the most stylish one on this list is called, what is this called? The most stylish one on this list is called Legion. Now this is not a very good movie, yet it's so beautiful in the way it's shot and it's so dark that I think you can overlook a lot of the silliness in it or fully embrace the silliness. Watch this one as like a drive-in movie that has this just beautiful gloss on it. This one's about the apocalypse. There's angels, there's demons, There's a diner out in the middle of the desert, and again, just amazing cinematography, amazing visuals with the angel wings and everything. It's worth watching just for that, but don't go into it expecting like this amazing story. It really kind of falls flat. Again, it's still enjoyable with the right set of expectations. And I mean, I've got it up in the middle of this list, and it's really not as good a movie as some of the other ones I mentioned, but it's just so sick. By the way, I had a plan to do this video in like full Gene Simmons makeup, and Darcy said that was probably not a good idea, so if you wanted to see me do that, you can blame her down in the comments. If you like these types of recommendations, go ahead and click that subscribe button and be sure to click that little bell icon so you get notifications when I put out new videos like this one, but be sure that the bell is full. I think you have to. If you don't, you won't get notifications all the time, but I put up new lists like this multiple times a week. All right, my number 5 pick is another Netflix original, and it's got the longest title on earth. I Don't Feel at Home in This World Anymore. This is actually directed by the same guy who starred in Blue Ruin. If you like that movie, he's in this one a little bit, but he directed it. And this is kind of a cool flick. Elijah Wood stars. It's this crazy kind of, almost like a Napoleon Dynamite type character, but like not a cartoonish Napoleon Dynamite. Almost like if Napoleon Dynamite was based on a real person. Elijah Wood is that real person. And this one, obviously it's on this list. It's got a dark edge. It's quirky. It's funny at times, but then someone will suddenly get shot in the head. Like it's grim. It's surprisingly grim, I guess is the best way to put this one. I enjoyed it, but it's another one of those weird ones that's like, it doesn't fit into a box. It's not really quite like anything else you've seen. But if you like cool little indie movies, like little film festival type movies, this is gonna be right up your alley. Now for the only horror movie on this list, The Blackcoat's Daughter is another one I've mentioned on the channel recently, and I wanted to include this one above any other because all horror movies are dark in one sense or another. But this one's kind of short on scares. There's a few, but it's shorter on that, and it really leans largely on dread. And this movie builds a really deep sense of dread. There's some horrific stuff that happens, some horrific visuals. The camera does not look away from some of the terrible stuff that happens, but when terrible things are not happening, there's a constant anticipation that something terrible is about to happen. The mood of this one is just drenched in darkness, making it a perfect fit for this list. Believe it or not, I got another Netflix original, and I don't just do that just to include them because this is a Netflix list. If you're new to the channel, welcome, but I just pick honestly ones that I think are good recommendations. And sticking with this weird, dark theme, The Perfection fits perfectly on this list. Now, I'm well aware a lot of people did not like this movie. I'm also well aware that a lot of people that did like it really liked it. It's one of those films that's fairly polarizing, and I think it's another one where if you have expectations going into it, especially if you expected it to be a horror movie, you're not really going to like it. But if you just go into it blindly and you like weird, creepy, dark stuff, this movie is perfect. I think it delivered a lot of things really well. I compared it a lot to like South Korean thrillers. Yet this is an American-made movie, yet it felt like one of those, like a movie like Oldboy. I loved almost everything about it. It was a little slow to start, but it ultimately really surprised me. And again, for a Netflix original, this one really just stood out to me. Now, a great pick that it's been around for a long time. It's not really science fiction, but it's futuristic. Christian Bale is in it, and it still kind of manages to be a hidden gem. I know a lot of people know about this movie, but I know there's just as many that have never heard of it and are probably going to love it. If you're a fan of The Matrix, you need to watch Equilibrium first off of this list. Like I said, it stars Christian Bale, it's in the future, it's got kind of a book-burning backstory. There's heavy gunplay, John Wick types of gunplay, unrealistic types of gunplay too, in terms of just like really using your body a lot. There's some martial arts nonsense, and it all works together perfectly. This one's got a cool style to it. It's again, it feels like The Matrix, and yet it's this hidden gem that never really picked up a huge audience, but I imagine most people will at least like this, and I would imagine a lot of you are gonna love it. And with that being such a strong recommendation, you might be wondering, well, what could be number one? Well, I have to put this movie at number one, Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. This checks all the boxes for this list. It's weird, it's dark, it's really well done. It executes all of those things perfectly, and this is, well, this movie's not necessarily for everybody. It's kind of one of those ones everybody should watch at least once. It's based on a classic book, so the story is top notch. But it is, whew, man, this one is really, really dark. If you have trouble with scenes of sexual assault, you're gonna have a hard time with this movie. This movie does not glorify them, but it has very, very strong statements on rehabilitation, things like that. So if you've never seen it, this is a movie lovers must watch. You have to watch it at some point. If you've never seen it and you watch it, come back to the video and let me know in the comments what you thought, because I'm genuinely curious. But that wraps it up for this video. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so a number of ways. You can become a Patreon supporter like one of these fine people. You can check out the merch shop and get yourself a Flick Connection t-shirt designed by yours truly. Likes, comments, do not forget shares, those are always appreciated. But I will keep making videos like this as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking this one out, and you will see me on the next one.